Despite having one of the most intensive rivalries in UFC history, Daniel Cormier is quite optimistic about Jon Jones making a comeback to the promotion. Believe it or not, Cormier actually thought the opposite when he lined Jones up against heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou and challenger Ciryl Gane. Speaking of Jon, did he and his late buddy Anthony Johnson ever share the cage? Keep watching this video for more news on both stories. First up, crazy talented. Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier have a lot of history. Both fighters go way back, and whenever we think about them, all the insults, below the belt strikes, and hatred come to mind. It was super obvious they were out to get each other, and their fights were beyond entertaining. And ahead of Jon's highly anticipated comeback to the UFC, DC has shocked everyone after siding with the former light heavyweight champion. There's some news going around that Bones will be taking on the Cameroonian Predator in his comeback fight, and Cormier thinks he still has what it takes to put on a good show. My opinion of him has changed in this regard, that I think that he's so talented that, regardless, he'll be okay. Now, whether the 35-year-old can finish the job is still a huge question mark in Daniel's eyes, but in terms of competing and giving whoever his next opponent might be a good fight, Jones has that department covered. But still, he's coming off a really long break, and even though he's number 13 in the light heavyweight rankings, it's impossible to count him out. Cormier also linked his return to the likes of MMA legend Georges St. Pierre.
Very impressive performance from Georges St. Pierre with a very difficult opponent. He falls back for a leg lock.
And this fight is over.
Claiming 3 years away from the game will definitely make any fighter a bit rusty, but it won't strip them of their natural talent. And as far as the potential fight against Ngannou goes, it's yet to be confirmed, but odds makers may have already placed Bones as the underdog, with Anthony Smith calling him beatable.
Anthony Smith! Oh! Big kick from Lionheart! Anthony Smith! That's it! Lionheart finishes Andrew Sanchez!
Next, it's been done before. We know what you're thinking right now. Jones could be the most dangerous man on the planet, but going 3 years without a single fight is not really an ideal situation, especially when you consider how he's about to hit 36. Is he the same fighter who dominated opponents inside the cage? Does he have what it takes to compete in the heavyweight division? Only time will tell. But it's not like this hasn't been done before, you know. Remember when Georges St. Pierre made his comeback after 3 long years, moved up a weight class, and won the middleweight title? If someone as talented as the Canadian can do it, why not Jones? He's equally talented, if not more, right? Daniel initially thought the time away from fighting would serve to be a bit too much, but after relating the whole situation with the Bisping vs. George matchup, he's changed his mind. Like we said before, it's possible, but extremely difficult. We're not taking anything away from Michael Bisping, but this is Francis Ngannou we're talking about, the king of the heavyweights.
Uppercut.
Yeah, he's done. That's it. Wow.
Knockout! Vicious uppercut!
Wow.
Just one punch would be enough to rock Jones and send him to the Shadow Realm. And since this is his debut in the heavyweight division, he'll need to get used to a lot of things when he shares the cage with a beast like the Cameroonian. Johnny Bones will need to bring his A-game to the cage, but he does have a slight advantage here. Ngannou has also been off for almost a year now after injuring his leg. Moving on, a complete fighter. Anthony Smith had a lot to say about Jon making a comeback, and if we're being super honest, it didn't make a lot of sense. Smith said Jones is beatable, since he's not that good of a fighter. His individual skills are average, but when he pairs everything together, that's when he becomes so dangerous. Or look at it this way, Smith said if both of them ever get into a jiu-jitsu match, he'll smoke Bones any day of the week. But if it's a wrestling match, the 35-year-old has it in the bag. Honestly speaking, we don't know what to say right now. Isn't that what MMA is about in the first place? It literally means mixed martial arts. The fact that Jones is able to combine his talent and turn it into this dominant, complete fighter is actually a huge display of his skill level. But yeah, we're not saying Smith isn't right since there are a few areas he lacks. But let's put what everyone is saying aside for a second. Does Jones really have enough to put away someone like Francis Ngannou? Well, it's not like he's at his peak now or something. We've actually noticed him on a downward trajectory. His past 2 fights against Thiago Santos and Dominic Reyes show just that.
UFC light heavyweight champion of the world, Jon
He did end up winning both fights, but it wasn't the Jon Jones we knew. It was a huge underperformance on his part in both matchups. Following up, hit and run. As die-hard MMA fans, we were really sad to hear about Anthony Johnson, along with being a deadly opponent inside the cage. He was a really fun character, and even though Jones and Johnson were quite the buddies outside the cage, they were actually supposed to battle it out inside the octagon a couple of years back at UFC 187. It was a fight for the light heavyweight title, and Anthony was pumped to be getting a shot at gold. But what do you know? Jones does what he always does. He was involved in a hit and run, and the UFC had to take action. They decided to strip him of the title and remove him from the event. The fight then went to DC, who fought the late Anthony Johnson with the light heavyweight title on the line. It was a really good matchup, but Cormier ended up winning the fight after a rear naked choke in the 3rd round. Credit to Rumble for taking the fight on such short notice. But you gotta consider a lot of things here. For starters, he probably trained for Jones and got handed a fight against Cormier at the very last moment. So yeah, Johnson was supposed to fight Jones, but it never happened since the former champ was tossed aside by the UFC after a hit and run situation. Maybe it was for the good though. Both of them were always pulling pranks and just having a good time. Up next, a fantastic fight. Jones might have been the more talented fighter out of the two, but boy was Rumble good. It would have been a fantastic fight since both men were really good at striking and grappling. Things even used to get heated between the two during the build-up, but despite all the drama and aggression, both of them always remained on good terms. It was fun to watch though, because this was the first time we saw Jones with his guard down, and if we're being honest, Jones could have even used that to his advantage to win the fight. But we still remember that day when Anthony was in the middle of the cage and told Johnny Bones to keep his head up. He apologized to the fans for being unable to give them the fight they wanted and told Jon they'd fight in another life. The duo even played a harmless prank on Dana White during a face-off that got everyone cracking up. Now Dana is a pretty big guy, but when he stands next to guys like Bones and Rumble, he looks puny. Both guys get up close and personal and just latched onto each other all of a sudden. Everyone thought things just got really real and they were about to see a scuffle between two buddies. White completely flipped out since there was no way he could control two huge and powerful guys. But as soon as the boss tried to step in, Jon and Anthony made it clear they were just messing around, only to get a huge sigh of relief from Dana. Last but not least, a tribute to Anthony Rumble Johnson. After hearing about the passing of his buddy, Jon Jones was shaken, and why wouldn't he be? This is just one incident we talked about from what we've heard. Both these guys had a lot of them. They were always messing around and having fun. Jones shared a video montage in memory of the late great, including a snippet of the classic Dana White prank we just told you about. Johnson was only 38 years old when he passed, and if we were to talk about his caliber, this video would go on for another half hour. He had some outstanding runs at the UFC, including 3 knockouts against some mean guys like Jimmy Manua, Ryan Bader, and Glover Teixeira. His passing is a huge loss to the MMA community, and he'll always be remembered as one of the most skilled and humble fighters in the UFC. That's it from our side, folks. So what do you think? Is DC right about Jones being talented enough to compete after being out for 3 long years? Let us know in the comments below. Remember, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more exciting videos in the future. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.